Welcome, and much for joining us, the University of Cincinnati College of Arts and Sciences. Yet another live chat session with members of our leadership team, as well as uh, members of our community. As we indicated in our previous sessions, we want to have a commitment to these types of conversations so as to give you timely updates and to be able to answer any questions that you may have so that we can keep the line of communication open. Before we jump into the opening comments from our dean, I would like all staff persons from the College of Arts and Sciences who are in the virtual environment to now introduce themselves so that our newest members of the Bearcat family, some of whom have already confirmed, and others who will be confirming later, we hope, will know who we are. So, staff members, will you now introduce yourself? I'll start. My name is Derek Robertson. I'm a member of the Arts and Sciences recruitment team, and it's just a pleasure to see all of you here today. And now, uh, whomever wants to go next, I think Kelly, you would be great. Kelly.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Hi, I'm Kelly Schiller, and I am one of the advisors in the Center for Exploratory Studies. I've been an advisor at UC for about 8.5 years, I believe. The first 5 of those years, I did advising with students with declared majors in the College of Arts and Sciences. And since the summer of 2016, I have been an advisor in the Center for Exploratory Studies, working with students who are looking to find their best fit major.
Right. Lauren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Pappin. I serve as a senior academic advisor in the College of Arts and Sciences on the declared side, so students who have declared a major. I work specifically with biological sciences and environmental studies students, but I'm happy to talk about all majors and address questions of all of our majors tonight. And this is just over 4 years at UC for me, so excited to answer any questions y'all might have tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. So, a couple of other housekeeping items. We are recording this session, and it will be posted to a parent frequently asked questions page that we've created for the benefit of these sessions and documenting all of the exchanges we're having here today. Our marketing and communication team will post the recordings as soon as the closed captioning has been worked out because we want to be ADA compliant. So while the recording will not, this particular recording will not appear like tomorrow, it is going to appear in the very near future after this. And with that being said, also, if you have questions, send them through the chat feature. And I'm now going to turn it over to our dean, who will offer some opening words for us.
Yeah, hello. I just, so first of all, I want to thank again those who are here. I know that we've had some of these, so I don't know how many of you are repeat attendees. And I don't want to assume that everybody is a repeat attendee, but if you are a repeat attendee, obviously some of the things that I might say right now are, repetitive in some ways. And so please bear with me. I won't give you a lot of information because I think most of the information that comes out, the best information actually comes from your questions. And so, in fact, please use the chat function if you want to ask some questions, even as I speak. It is useful I think sometimes to just write questions as you hear things said that cause you to think and want to know more. So, as I said, this is the fourth of these meetings that I've held. I started with one basically 2 weeks ago. What we're trying to do is keep you updated on what is happening here. We are in the process. There are 2 things that I've noticed in the surveys that we have received. And by the way, any of you who have filled the 3rd surveys, thank you very much. We had over 400 people fill the surveys. That's a huge amount of people, and it shows how both concerned and interested you are in what we have to say. So I really appreciate people who took the time to do this. I know that one of the big questions that everybody's asking is, will there be face-to-face instruction in the fall, and when will we find out? And we are in the process of trying to get even more clarity. When I first started this 2 weeks ago, we were still trying to figure out our way around this. We know right now that our research teams are starting to ramp up. They are filling in requests to come to campus to use labs. We are going to probably the president has presented a 4-phase what we call a return to campus procedure, which will then move to a second phase in July with a initial amount of staffing covering our stations, if we want to call them that. And then obviously in August, there will be more ramp up of the staff with the expectation that we will have some obviously presence in person with the upcoming fall. We have to be very cautious still about what we promise. We are following the state and governor's guidelines. So that is kind of what has been leading us. We also want to make sure that we're not at complete odds with what people around us and other universities are doing. If you're paying attention, which I'm sure many of you are, we have a different system in different universities announcing already what they're going to do. We know that some people in, I think the Arizona university system has said that they're coming face-to-face in the fall. The California state system has actually said that they're going to be fully online. So there are, different people are taking different solutions at this time. I think from the surveys, we also got a sense that many of you are willing to wait until July, beginning in mid-July, to find out a more definite answer. That has been really useful so that we have a little more time for planning what we want to do. I can tell you that in my college, I have been sort of floating two ideas, and they involve a mix right now of online hybrid instruction and face-to-face. And that will very much be determined also by a number of different concerns. So I know you have concerns for your kids. We have concerns for some of our, for example, older faculty who have immune compromised systems. So we need to make sure that those people are accounted for, and maybe those people would be more likely to teach some online classes, which, by the way, have always been present the last 10 years at the university. It's just that the quantity that we had to switch to in the spring was obviously absolute, as opposed to just a fraction of what we teach. But we are making those decisions. We have a teaching task force that is helping us sort of model what it might look like. And we are going to continue that kind of modeling. We also have a dean meeting for all the deans of the different colleges tomorrow and the following day to have an open conversation about what different colleges might do, because they have a different kind of population. The College of Arts and Science has a younger population. Even though we do have some non-traditional students, we have a lot of the traditional freshmen that come in, and that is a consideration as well, because we do know that for many of you, that means that you have a strong interest for the campus life that they have. So I will leave it at that right now. I think questions are probably, the thing that we should do and move forward. And, I'm more than happy to answer as much as I can. And as I said, our advisors also are on deck to answer questions that I cannot answer.
All right. So we've already gotten a number of questions that seem to want an established timeline for when a decision will be made about whether students will be coming to campus for the fall. When might we know this? This has been a recurring question for all of these sessions, but have you any additional information for the parents?
Well, as I said, I think, just by running the survey that I did, and I know it varies, but I got a really strong sense from that, just looking at all of the entries that I saw in the survey, that many people are okay with even a July 1st to July 15 window. And I know some of you have an earlier window, like a June 1st. I don't know that we might be ready for June 1st, but I think at this point, I want to be more cautious in saying, yes, we'll have something for you June 1st, and then we don't. And then you're like, well, he told us June 1st. The reality is it's really important to have all the scenarios worked out, not because, we're experts, but we need to figure out, for example, the class scheduling issue. If we have face-to-face classes, we need to make sure that we understand how students will come into a class, let's say from one door, and they'll go out from a different door. We will want to keep them spaced out. We will want to also have them coming out in a corridor that is not jammed with everybody coming out of their classes. So how do we do that? Entrance and exit from buildings. How do we do that? How do we ensure that we have certain areas cleaned all the time by either the staff or even by faculty as they come in and out of classrooms. So just making sure that we have the best precautions it takes some time to figure out. So I'm not trying to put off the question. It's just that it's been a lot of information, and we have to take into consideration, like other factors, such as what will the state do if there is a spike, and so we need to be preparing. We're preparing sort of multiple plans, and that's it's as frustrating for us, I think, as it is for you. Trust me, we're trying to get to the bottom of those questions as best we can.
As a spin-off, a dovetail to that question, families are asking, can you share with them some of the safety guidelines or protocols that will be implemented, for instance, for the dorms? And also, when might we know what classes will be online versus what will be face-to-face?
So that's, there's a multiple answer to that. So let me start with the second part of that, because as I said, we're trying to model what it would look like. There are some classes that we do believe, both in our college and in other colleges, that would be impacted severely in some ways by not being face-to-face. So for example, some of the more advanced labs in chemistry, in biology, in some of the sciences that are smaller classes to begin with would be the places where we would want to, for sure, have some of these face-to-face. But also, we're talking in the opposite direction, and this is something that would affect, obviously, your kids, your children. Composition classes, places where we have smaller numbers, even the freshman year experience classes. Those may be classes that are candidates for face-to-face. The importance, however, is to make sure that that experience that typically would be between, between 15 and 25 students takes place in a space that is wide enough and big enough to keep them at a distance, even as they're doing activities possibly together. So figuring out those details, I would say that probably the candidates for face-to-face are typically the smaller classes that allow us to use some of the larger classrooms that in the past would have been used for bigger lectures in that form. But it could actually be even medium-sized classes, because if you can fit a class of 50 students in a lecture hall of 200, that would allow us to maintain the safe distancing. Probably the classes at this point that we're seeing less likely to be in a face-to-face format, or at least it would have to be a modified or a hybrid format, are the big lecture classes. And let me give you an example. Let's say we have a typical lecture of 300 students in an intro, let's call it, intro biology. To run that 300 students in a 300-seat class would be obviously very detrimental to everybody's health if someone is a carrier. So one possible modeling, especially if it's taught on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, is to have 100 students present in the class, spaced out every 3 seats on Monday. The other 200 are following the course synchronously, so at the same time via video, and can intervene and ask questions via video, because we do have TAs for those classes. Those TAs could, in fact, do the same thing that Derek and Lauren are doing now, which is to interpret questions and actually bring them up to the forefront of the class. Then on Wednesday, a second 100 would be there. The first 100 would go video, and the third. So we would switch those in that classroom and in thirds, so that they can both all of them can have some face-to-face, but also they would not be in a condition of being in the same classroom at the same time. So that's how we would do that. Now, with regards to the dorms, it's dorms are I saw a comment that I really appreciated, which is, this is a teaching moment, but we also have to remember that kids are 17, 18, 19. So, we could say, look, you're responsible in your dorm for how you handle social distancing. We can certainly have, and we will have, sanitizers and hand cleaners and all of that stuff available for kids in these dorms. But I think one of the things that we are trying to figure out right now is how would we make sure that, in fact, we are helping maintain the health of all of the students. And so there might be some testers for, fever and other symptoms at the entrance doors of the dorms. There might be some at the that actually have, there may be some spacing that is put between rooms. We may not have full capacity. We'll have to decide how to handle that as well. But those are some of the things that I'm looking at. And we have had some very specific guidelines now distributed. I'll try to give them to Derek to distribute later. There are guidelines that are on some of our websites about what this might look like as we move forward. But I can tell you that, for example, with regards to research, if we have undergrads or students who are involved in these things, there's a very strict protocol that right now all of our researchers and all of our faculty who do sort of hands-on researches and research with undergrads need to submit, including how they intend to maintain safe distancing and how they intend to keep students engaged without exposing them to contact. So there's a lot going on there, and this is why it's taking more time than people expect, because we're looking at all the possible scenarios.
Yeah, Val, in the opening parts of your commentary, you touched on the fact that each of us is watching the news and seeing news articles about other institutions who have made a decision. And even in this chat, there's been a private message about the fact that Purdue and Notre Dame have made their decision. Can you expound on, how we might think about that as an institution, and, how, let's just provide a framework for our families around, other people are making their decisions. What's taking us so long?
I think, it's a really good question. I think, first of all, you have to understand that different institutions have different pressures. One of the things is, Notre Dame is a decent sized university, but it's not a 46,000 student university. They have different concerns with regards to their spacing than we have. Notre Dame is has more room, let's put it this way, than we have. And that's an important factor in this day and age, especially with the coronavirus, where we have been told that, in fact, the distance between people needs to be taken into account. So with regards to, why they, Purdue, and it's interesting, Purdue and Notre Dame are in Indiana. I have not followed what the state of Indiana guidelines are right now from their governor, and I'm wondering if that has some impact on this. It might not. I'm not obviously looking at least at that level what they're doing. We know that in Ohio, we're still sitting with a lot of other universities trying to figure out how to interpret the governor's decisions and what the state might do. So, as I said, we are still following some of those guidelines. I think, we're trying to be very cautious, because this is the risk. The risk, and this is the risk of anybody who announces early. Let's say we announce right now, that we go fully online in the fall. Then comes August and September, and we are, suddenly we see that there's a control, or I don't know, the vaccine hasn't been approved or something like that. But we have said to everybody right now that we're going online. If I gauge from your answers, people are not very happy about the online option, and they might have already deferred. They might by then have deferred to the fall or the following spring. And now all of a sudden, in August and September, we are saying, oh, everybody's on campus. So many of you would be, oh, this doesn't work for me right now. This is kind of like, I wish I had waited a little bit longer. So we know we can't wait that long, but there is also an advantage to waiting a little bit longer and making a decision. And the opposite is true. I mean, if we've said, okay, we're going to go all face to face, and you're all very excited about that, but then in August, suddenly we have a spike that leads to, massive contagion in this region, then we would see a real different response from people. So I think sometimes it's not, I think it helps us two ways. One is we do want to be cautious in how we apply the different rules, but I also think we want to make sure that we're not putting you in a situation where now you make a choice, and then that choice will have consequences down the line that you didn't really expect. And we also understand that there are some of you who don't want to wait that long, but we are trying to balance those factors all together.
Families are asking about whether we have additional information pertaining to the possibility of more financial aid or scholarships for students.
I think those are questions that you need to, well, look, I actually, and Derek knows about this, the college is doing what it can right now to sort of address some of these things in a small fashion. With regards to financial aid, I think if your situation has changed, again, I don't claim to be an expert, but you should go and refer again and see if there's any way that you can have your financial aid revisited. Derek, Lauren, I don't know if you have any more information about that you want to share, but I can tell you that we are looking where we can to do little things, but we, on the other hand of that, as I have not discussed, is we're facing some significant cuts because our state support of instruction has declined substantially. So we are confirming all of our scholarship money. We're even looking for a little bit more. It won't be, great amounts, but we're trying to figure out how to deploy it. So
it's also important to note that a lot of families, their situation has changed since the time of submitting information with respect to the FAFSA. Persons have been furloughed and laid off, and income has changed, all of these variables. And so if that is your situation, and you have not yet reached out to our Office of Student Financial Aid, that would be my first piece of advice. But if you're not getting a response, I want to go to work for you. So definitely reach out to me and let me rattle a few cages and say, this family's circumstance has evolved or changed, and we need to take a look at their situation again, with circumstances considered. All right. So definitely, I think that's another point or variable to consider. And we know that as a result of COVID-19 is a real circumstance for a lot of families out here.
Yeah, I do want to actually acknowledge that, Derek. It's a huge issue. We are in the process of, in fact, trying to figure out what we're going to do with our own staffing and our own people. I have a lot of empathy for people who have had significant changes. Two of my siblings have been laid off, so I understand very well what that means in terms of changed circumstances. So I don't want to diminish that, and that's what Derek says. If your circumstances have changed, please let the Office of Financial Aid know. There might be some either federal or state support that, in fact, you can tap into.
And so for our advisors, there were a number of things I'd like to enlist your partnership with clarifying. First and foremost, I always want to be cognizant that some people can't see the chat. So we've been responding to messages in the chat, but now let us verbally represent the responses. Someone was asking, is it this week or next week that advisors will be reaching out to students? And I, thinking I was smart, I said that it would be this week, and I was asking for you to verify that for me, Lauren. So is it this week or next week?
Sure. I'm going to speak first and then I'll let Kelly jump in. So just a reminder, so when I speak, I'm talking about our students that are declared in A&S majors. And when Kelly is talking, she is referring to students in the exploratory population. So just keep that in mind. While we do have very similar processes, there are some key differences. One of those being how we're going through registration this summer. So for declared students, you should, if you have confirmed, receive, I should say, if you had confirmed prior to Monday, because that's when we created our first list, your student should receive an email from their advisor this week sometime. Those may have already come through. A few of us have sent them already. A few people are still working on their messaging. We will continue to add new students to our list every Monday, minus Memorial Day. We'll do that on Tuesday. So just keep in mind that those, as your student confirms, if they're not yet confirmed, within a week, hopefully they'll be hearing from their advisor. And if you have a student who hasn't heard from their advisor by the time that next week starts, please reach out to Derek so he can let us know.
Kelly,
you want to talk about what Exploratory is doing?
Sure. All of the exploratory advisors, either late last week or today, we actually met today, this morning, have sent all of the confirmed students in exploratory an introductory email, a survey, directions to the math placement test. We have a pretty extensive survey to ask the students about their goals, their plans, whether they're truly exploring all of their options or if they have a couple of majors in mind that they are pursuing. So it's out there. I've actually just checked my surveys just before I got on this meeting, and 8 of them have replied since I sent it out a couple of hours ago. So they are anxious to talk to us, and we are anxious to talk to them. We're very excited about reaching out to them. It's been really nice to have that interaction and that normalcy, I guess. So I think everybody in exploratory has been contacted as of today.
Awesome, great. And and Lauren, there was an allusion to the math placement test, but our next question talks about that. After incoming students take the math placement test, how soon are advisors really able to help them with class selection? I'm confused about how to guide my child when she gets all the emails and the parents are on this call hearing that we don't know what classes are doing what.
Well, I mean, I can speak to the math placement test. I mean, as soon as they take it, let's say, for instance, a student's interested in going to the Lander College of Business. I mean, that has a math progression. The student knows their score instantly after they've taken the test, and so do we. So we can move on that like immediately and do placement in math for the courses that require math placement.
I think the question might be more, so how can we actually select courses at a time when we don't know if they're going to be online or in person? I think, the courses are there, so they could definitely start enrolling. And then obviously, I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to sort of make sure that we have is an availability of courses in different modalities if possible, so that people can actually move into different classrooms, if that was the question. So I just want to make sure that yeah, so with regard to the math placement, obviously the sooner you do it, you take it, the better it is in terms of allowing us to then place you in the appropriate class. And then at that point, we will also try to figure out what would be available at this point and in what form, because as I said, there are probably going to be different formats for how we're going to do some of these classes. And I hope that's what people were looking at in terms of, yeah, I see that question just came back. That's my question. I do want to, so the other thing that I saw a question that was really interesting to me, it might not be interesting to all of you, but that I do want to answer because I thought it was something that, it was a question about have we seen changes to the enrollment, whether, dropping or more enrollment? And so I'll give you the picture that I'm seeing right now, because we have actually models for a lot of this stuff. So, we have our summer school enrollment, which typically means mostly our own students who are already at the university, has actually, especially in our college, has gone surprisingly up a lot. And all of those classes are online, by the way. So we have had a hike of 20% of students taking courses during the summer and about 30% of student credit hours. I'm not sure. I think the way I interpret this is twofold. One is students who are in other universities see our offerings and they're now enrolling here. We have had a spike of 30% in students who are not UC taking our courses during this period, partly because we have offered some courses that in the past we did not offer online. I'm pretty sure of that. With regards to next year, we are, like you, a lot of students, the returning students are still looking at what is happening. They're trying to gauge the panorama. I can't tell you how hard these advisors are working with our students to ensure that they feel safe about what we're doing. But we have, because we had a very large population of freshmen last year, our returning students right now are, we have more students, even though we are slightly below what we were retaining before. And the place where we're seeing drops in enrollments compared to this year, last year, is with the freshman class, obviously, because you guys are making your decisions. You guys are trying to figure things out. And so I think given the panorama that you're seeing, you're taking more time in making your decisions. So, but that's kind of what we're seeing on this end of this admission process and return of students process. So, to be expected. I don't think I mean, it hasn't been a dramatic differential. There is, but in the freshman class, people are making decisions, are taking a little bit more time, and we appreciate that too.
And so I see a question that talks about what is required from students at this time, deadlines for immediate next steps. And so that is an entirely great question. And we want to keep this as concise as possible, because the transition from high school to college, you're right, it can be overwhelming, especially if this is your first student who's going through the process. But I think there are upwards of four things I would advise. First and foremost, the biggest marching order is for your students to stay on top of their email. People need to check email and also read email in the conjunctive. Not only open it, but see what it's telling you to do. It has next steps and calls to action that are very important. Aside from generally reading email all the time and checking email all the time, the first deadline specific thing that a student is required to do, if it has not already been done, is to confirm by June 1st. So June 1st is what we're looking ahead to, so that you can be a member of our Bearcat family, our Bearcat community. That's one of the biggest next steps that you can take, is to confirm your admission. Once you've confirmed your admission, that sets off a number of other messages about housing, about orientation. And those are the two biggest pieces, in addition to confirming, that I think we need to be thinking about. So I'm going to enlist the partnership of my colleagues to talk to you about orientation. But before doing so, I want to make you aware that our housing application is still open and you can still apply for housing. May 28th, just to give you a date, is the date that has been set for students to be invited or communicated with about room selection stuff. And so May 28th, if the student has already applied for housing, that student will start receiving messages about doing room selection. And then beyond May 28th, if the student has still not confirmed, June 1st will be coming right along, and that will be an endpoint to which you need to confirm. And following from that, there are some orientation dates that I'll yield to Lauren and Kelly to tell you about. So you might need to organize these dates a little bit, put them in chronological order after we've given them to you. But right now, you should have May 28th, housing stuff, room selection, June 1st, confirmed. Now, what's about orientation, Lauren and Kelly?
So orientation, if you haven't yet heard, will open in what we call Canvas, which is our online learning module, on June 8th. And it will be a series of modules that the student will complete that will go over all of the normal content that's delivered at an orientation. For those of you who have attended orientations before, you know how much content that is. So being able to spread it out might actually be really nice. So for our students in Declared, that Canvas module is what will kick off fall course registration. And for some of the very reasons that we've talked about tonight, giving faculty a little bit of time to adjust, having some more specific answers for your students. So we will be working with students starting June 8th to register for fall courses in Declared. This is a little bit different for exploratory. So again, I want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm speaking specifically about our Declared population of students. The email that they're receiving from their advisor this week will outline very generally what that will look like. Your students will have two opportunities, or at least two opportunities, I should say, to meet with their advisor this summer. So they'll complete the Canvas module. They'll complete one of the modules within the Canvas course. That will sort of guide them to our form. So Kelly was talking about a form where she's getting to know her students and learn about them. Our form will be within that module. And then the students will start to receive emails with course recommendations. Will be available for registration support, but they'll have a small group. So those small groups will be students, hopefully about 6 to 8 students. As we get our final confirmation numbers, we'll confirm those small group sizes. But we'll have small groups where your student will actually be able to meet some of the people that are going to be in the same courses as them. So our goal with those small groups is that we might have students who are in the same learning community, so they're actually going to be in 3 classes or so together in the fall, or in similar course schedules in the fall. So we made similar course recommendations. I think one of the pieces that we're all sort of craving right now, right, is that opportunity to connect. And that's what you would do at orientation, right? Your friends or your students would come home with numbers exchanged and friends and know who's going to be in the same class as them. And we're going to create that same opportunity for students to know a few people who are going to be in courses with them in the fall semester. They'll also have an individual advising appointment where we'll finalize that schedule. I do want to make sure to say there's quite a few of your students, right? And so we will be registering throughout the summer. Most of the courses that our first year incoming students are going to take are actually reserved for them. So there's not really this concern of running out of classes or getting that last option, you know, we hear about. But I also want to be clear in saying that your student can start to register as soon as we start that relationship with them, and we will have support available online, whether it's current students or some of our advisors who just have less students coming in over the summer, will be available to help students register throughout the summer. So if there is a decision that makes your student want to change their schedule or parts of their schedule, or your student is more comfortable waiting until July, we're gonna be here the whole summer. We're gonna be hosting small groups the whole summer. So that's a little bit about what orientation will look like for declared students and what that process will look like for declared students.
It's very similar for the exploratory students, with the exception of the survey that we sent out. That is one of the reasons why we sent it out, you know, a couple of weeks in advance of the June 8th date that Lauren was talking about. Our students, you know, the declared students have decided that their major will be psychology, biology, or what have you. The exploratory students are a little bit different, so we do have to get information from them, and that is why we sent that out to them. Just like Lauren said, we are planning a combination of small group meetings with the students so that they can meet with each other. So if we have a group of students who are looking at the College of Business, for example, we can put them in a small group together and have them get to know one another. And we will also be meeting with them one-on-one to talk about their other questions or, courses and so on. But most of what Lauren said would be the same for exploratory, except we're trying to gather information about their goals and intended major if they have one.
So there are two questions that I wanted to answer myself. I saw one was about, isn't online the safest method? I think, this is another thing that we need to balance. So we do actually have a start from home possibility for those who really do want to be as safe as possible and start online. I'm not sure when that announcement, or if the announcement already came out, but people who have, for example, some of your kids might actually might have immune deficiencies. And so we want to ensure that, in fact, those students feel heard, and we do have the possibility for them to start fully online in the fall. Another question that I believe I saw that I'm now trying to go back to what I saw in the questions. There was something about the university online services being able to handle the increased amount of online activity. Well, actually, because of what happened in the spring, we know that we can handle it. Because we actually doubled the size of our capacity during that period to make sure that we were both handling the VPN, so that the secure connections. So the reality is that our university services have the power to handle this. Sometimes the concern is not so much the university services, but in fact the surrounding services, the providers have. And our understanding is that since we went through this exercise already in the spring, that actually was not a major concern locally. I think it's more of a concern for people who live in places where internet connection is not very good. And that would be something that we would have to consider as well when we're doing these things.
So another question, Dave, it talks about, has there been any concern about the university's online services being able to handle the increased amount of oh, that's what you were just talking about?
I was just answering. Yes. Yep.
Where was Derek? Oh my God, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Derek, can I hop in and answer the questions about the orientation modules?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
like as a matter of fact, because we have a lot of questions, probably still like as concise as possible.
Sure.
Thank you.
There's a couple questions about the modules. So orientation will have town halls that are coming up. If you haven't yet signed up for an orientation town hall, I would encourage you and your student to attend one of those, because they will talk more about how students will move through those modules, how quickly they'll be able to complete them, what the whole summer will look like, and the whole experience will look like. From the ones that your student needs to complete to be able to register for courses, we'll make sure that they know specifically what those modules are so that you can prioritize those modules.
All right, cool.
I saw one from someone who said their daughter has been accepted by psychology. So your student would not be an exploratory. She would be a declared major, and so she would go with a group that Lauren handles. So just a very quick one-off answer there.
Perfect. All right.
Have we gotten all the questions? I'm just trying to figure out if we.
I just want to say that there are some families that are asking when are fees due for tuition, room and board, and meals. And I'm asking for a follow-up on that so that we can get you all of the comprehensive details and information about that. My email address is derek.robertson@uc.edu, and I'm putting it in the chat. It's been in there a couple of times, but here it is again. Definitely reach out to me as a follow-up so that we can give you all of that, all of those details, and you can have a web page to go to, or one of our colleagues to connect with, so that you can, just sort of orient yourself with respect to the timing and all of the different timelines associated with those types of questions. So follow up with me, send me an email, I'll take care of you if you have that question or any other question.
Yeah, I also saw one question or two about summer for freshmen. This is something that we have allowed as an option. I know Derek has answered it, but I just want to make it public, at least for people who are interested in that. We have had some freshmen that have decided to enroll in summer. Summer is already running right now. We're in the first phase, I mean, with Maymester, but we can still enroll people for courses later in the summer if there is an interest. And again, I think you can reach out to some of our advisors about what is available, how you can get in them. And we actually, I know that we are keeping open the possibility of, especially in certain areas, add some seats to classes. You know, if that's something that your student is interested in exploring, by all means, contact one of our advisors.
Have there been any types of activities which have been already canceled, like sports or clubs?
So no, because I mean, right now we are still in I mean, we do want to try to figure out how we might make them happen in a safe environment. As you probably know, if you're a big sports fan, I mean, I read ESPN every day. I mean, I look at these things and, you know, there is all this conversation about, okay, yes, we are going to go ahead with, I don't know, with football. How are we going to do this? Are we going to do it in empty stadiums? Are we going to do it in places that are spaced out? I think everybody's trying to handle those big questions that, and you know, my understanding is that a lot of you value very much sort of what campus life is about. I read that in your surveys, and I couldn't be more on board with how important those things are for us. You know, and I think it's a really big part of the experience. So again, we're trying to figure out how would we do this in a safe way? How do we do it in a way that doesn't expose people to too much contact? You know, I'm European, and one of the things that is happening right now is soccer is coming back, right? I mean, they've started games in basically empty stadiums, but players are on the field and they have a series of checkpoints. They have to come in, they have to be tested, they have to basically clear these standards for them to come onto the field. They have been banned from doing celebrations post scoring. They cannot. So there's a lot of stuff going on in those areas that I think we can learn from, and seeing what is happening there and how we might replicate it for your students with regards to sports and clubs and all of that stuff.
Has there been any discussion about reducing the amount of off-campus travel to limit possible exposure?
So I'll tell you what is happening at the level of the faculty. Right now, the faculty have a travel ban. I mean, we cannot go to conferences. So, and that's almost a national standard right now, which might be actually not a bad thing for your students, in the sense that many of our faculty cannot really go and get exposed somewhere else. Now, if you're asking about your kids traveling in this, I think, you know, if I recall, I've seen this also in the state guidelines, is limit your travel as much as possible. Be safe when you travel. These are, you know, I think now, I'm sorry if I called you by your first name, but I know that Alex said something about teachable moments. These are moments that we need to both enforce, but also we can't always trust everybody to do the right thing. So we need to be on the other side of this to provide some guidance. So if someone travels, there might be some kind of form that they need to fill, or they need to be doing some kind of checkpoint when they come back, just to make sure that they haven't picked up, you know, something that could in fact lead to contagion and that kind of stuff. So again, as I said earlier, these are all really excellent questions, and they go into this attempt to understand what a safe campus could look like in the fall.
Do you have any thought about how to provide more support to incoming students if classes will be mostly online? With the loss of face-to-face teaching and all the benefits that come along with that, will there be more academic support provided?
You know, again, excellent question. I mean, I can tell you what we have done, you know, when we switched from our normal classes in the last 6 weeks of the semester. There was certainly an increased amount of activity by our CETO, Center for, I want to call it Educational Technology, no, Educational Teaching and Learning. That group really did massive works precisely to set up set up as much as possible a best scenario learning environment. Was it perfect? No. And in fact, one of our we're really concerned and really working at, and is if we have to provide, if we have to shift, if we have to move back to online, if we have to do things like this, how do we ensure that the quality of the product that we're putting out there is worthy of the same consideration of what we do in person? I'm actually on a task force that is exploring how we prepare our faculty better to provide better instruction, whether it's online, hybrid, or even in person, based on what you're talking about. One of the things that we all feel, and you probably felt it, and you still feel it yourselves if you're still sort of doing a lot of safe distancing, is there was, we had a lot of concerns for the mental health of students. And so a lot of our faculty did reach out repeatedly to students in many areas, trying to ensure that they were doing okay. But I think that's certainly something that we need to pay more attention to and provide better instruction yet to what we were doing. So it is a priority. We're going to break down, for example, from surveys that we're doing, the faculty that didn't do so well and provide them with more support. But we also obviously want to make sure that the delivery of education is of a high quality standard for them if we have to make these switches online to face-to-face and vice versa.
Additional questions for our group of experts that are in the environment tonight? Definitely, we want to certain that. Oh, that's so cool, Connie. Let's look at this question, Dean. Is there anything that we can do as parents to help you? Look at Lauren smiling.
I think what you're doing now is already what is helping us. By listening to what your concerns are, by listening to what your ideas are, by filling out the surveys that we've sent. And I don't know if you, I'm assuming, Derek, that most parents have received the survey by now, if not all of them.
Correct, sir.
It does help us. I mean, sometimes we also get a sense for the nervousness that people on all sides have. I mean, it's difficult to navigate this time. I mean, we have like budget deficits that we're dealing with, but we're also understanding that people have different sort of financial circumstances. We also understand that some people are much more concerned about not having their kids in the situations that they can put them at risk. Other people say, well, this is something that we need to learn how to navigate through. It's a complete spectrum of concerns, emotions, ideas, but this does help us. I mean, I think it really helps us to be able to connect with you, to understand, and if possible, when we can, to assuage some of the fears. So, I find it really helpful to be here, and it's a commitment that we've made to ensure that you get as much information as you can.
I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
Sorry. I've been really impressed with the students, honestly. Every email that I have gotten from a student all through this 2 months or not, I don't even know how long it's been now. Every one of them has started their emails to me or their phone conversations with, how are you? Are you okay? They've been really, really thoughtful and gracious. And, that's a real testament to the parents. They have unfailingly been just really concerned with people's well-being and have asked about that. And I've been really touched by that in the students. I really have been. The other thing that I've noticed is that, they are very, They're very honest. I always start out my conversations with them, asking them how they're doing. Somebody referenced mental health in there, in your chat. And, we do talk about that with each other. How is your day? How was the end of the semester? How are things going for you? And they've just been very forthcoming and very open. And I've really appreciated that. And I can really see the work of the parents in every exchange that I've had with students during this whole time period. So parents are doing a great job. I also wanted to say, I've been on a few of these now. I have a child at UC who finished the semester online and is planning on going back in the fall. And I do agree that the teachers have worked exceptionally hard, and I can see that from a parent perspective, to make sure that their students are staying connected, and that learning continues, even though it looked different than how everyone planned it to look. But they have done an exceptional job from a parent perspective at UC, making sure that the students are well taken care of and continue to learn.
As usual, if you have any further questions, please contact us. I mean, I think we're available. I have gotten just a few questions directly to myself over the last few weeks. I've tried to redirect them, but I know that we have a team that is ready to answer as many questions as possible. I know that this is a really difficult time for everybody, and so we understand that we have to kind of be more able to answer some of these questions. And so just let us know, and we'll do the best that we can to help out.
Absolutely. And so, if there aren't any additional questions, on behalf of our dean, our faculty, staff, the current students, the entire arts and sciences community, thank you so much for joining us. As we indicated, we will be hosting these twice per week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The link you have, it's going to be the same link. So you just, same time, same place, every Tuesday and Thursday up until June 1st. And so with that being said, thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. And please stay safe, be well, and we'll be in touch. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Again, thank you very much.